Hi there. Welcome to the Right Here, Right Now live show. This show has one simple question. What's on your heart and mind right here, right now in this moment? We explore the depths and breadths of our humanity through that one simple question over the course of 30 to 45 minutes. I hope that you'll join us. I hope you'll enjoy the exploration. And this tune was created for me personally by the incredible Peter Griffiths, one half of the amazing Mind Takeaway. Do let us know what you think. Let us know what you take away. And of course, we always welcome challenges too. Hope to see you on the exploration. Hey, Angela Howard.
How are you?
I am doing so well. How are you?
I'm doing okay. You know, it's Friday. It's been a week. I'm excited to talk to you about it. But yeah, I'm doing okay. How are you doing?
I am doing really well. It's 2:00 in the afternoon here in the UK, so I'm winding down a little bit while you're winding up.
Yes.
So let everybody know, actually, as we get going today, where are you in the world and what does Angela do for work? And then we'll dive into that one key question.
Yeah, so I'm in Chicago, Illinois, the best city in the US. And I am an organizational psychologist. I work with companies to build more human-centric workplaces through actualizing this buzzword called culture, right? We talk about culture a lot, but how do you actually change behavior, change leadership? So that's what I do. That's what I work on.
That's really cool. And I love the fact we've got get the little work bit out the way, because Angela is so much more than that. We've had a couple of conversations now and we dive pretty deep pretty quickly. So hopefully you'll get some value if you're joining us now live. We're live on YouTube, live on LinkedIn, and also Facebook, what it's worth. I think I've got one person on it. But the YouTube and LinkedIn's the main thing. Check out Angela's details, so you can find all of her work at angelarhoward.com. So I just want to say hi. Thanks, Adrian's popped in to say hello. Adrian's another amazing human. You would love him. Also, Elise from South Africa. Thank you very much. And Chris. Hi, Chris. Good to see Chris as well. So, my God, there's a lot of love jumping in for Angela this morning. How are you doing? Check that out. Check that out. So, we have one question. So where we're going to go today is literally this one question. No prep, no planning. What is on your heart and mind right here, right now, in this moment? Angela Howard, I'd love to know.
Oh, in this very, very moment. So personally, my husband has left for the week. He's headed to Vegas. So I'm a little jealous. I'm feeling a little bit of FOMO about him going on a trip. But also, my mom is coming to visit for the weekend. And so it's such, it's so great to be around family, especially during these times. And I think it kind of brings you down to the basics of what matters and where your attention should be. So if I'm thinking about the crazy week I just had, Monday through Thursday, and now I'm really slowing down and taking a mindful moment with family. And then I'm going to rev up again, on Monday, right? But it's a reminder to get grounded to where you come from, where your attention and your energy should be. So that's personally. And then professionally, I'm working with a lot of executives, a lot of leaders around them envisioning this future of work, another buzzword, right? And, what's on my heart around that is, how do we continue to create equity when we're so dispersed as a workforce? And so that's a topic, if we have time, I'd love to dig into, because my thoughts and my perspectives have changed along the way. And it's kind of not heavy on my heart, but heavy on my heart. And that's what do we do next? How do we make sure that this next normal is better than it was before COVID?
Wow, two amazing, so I'm sitting here going, my God, how are these two things maybe even connected, right? So on a personal point of view, creating space, slowing down, being mindful, and actually how do we stay connected as dispersed teams?
Yes.
There's a really interesting interplay between those two things, I think, but we've got the time for you, half an hour. So I just want to, let's go for it. Just want to say hello to Michelle as well, the wonderful Michelle Hart saying hello as well. Thanks you all for joining us. So maybe speak a little bit, because I'm really curious about that. you said it's weighing a little bit heavy in terms of what may or may not come next, I guess, or maybe what you want to see more of that you worry won't stick, maybe. I don't know. I'd love to unpack a little bit. What's that sort of weighing part? I'm really curious around what is weighing right now around your thinking. That'd be really interesting.
Yeah, so I recently read some research, some studies that are coming out around the disparities around who is deciding to work from home. Like when given a choice, who is saying, I want to work from home. That's where I feel most comfortable. That's where I feel most of my sense of belonging. Versus the people who are saying, I feel most of my sense of belonging being in the office. We are seeing a very wide disparity of the demographics of those people. So your white males, for the most part, are saying, I feel more comfortable in the office. And your people of color, your women, more marginalized groups in the workplace are saying, I feel more belonging at home. And how interesting is that, right? Because it's like, if we think about the workplace as an institution, as a system that was created for white males, right? Let's be real. And it was designed for that demographic. Of course, you're going to see a disparity, right? Because the people who don't fit into that group, like myself, a woman of color, have been, flexing and trying to fit into that system for a very long time. And so, of course, working from home feels like, oh, I can finally be myself. This is where I feel like I belong. I can really feel a sense of belonging here. And so I think you're seeing this idea of working from home, hybrid working. It's even it's deepening the gap and the disparity. And so, we're talking a lot about just the choice to work from home or work from the office, but what we should be talking about is how do you just blow shit up at the office and redefine what that means. And then, but creating, connection and diversity around how we're working. So that's kind of the big, and again, I'm still formulating in my head because I just read this research and it was fascinating. But let's not let something like dispersed teams, hybrid working, that is a real positive, create more of a disparity than it was before, even before COVID, perhaps.
So I've got like a million different, I thank you for bringing this topic today. And also Adrian said, great topic. And Adrian he's also a coach and works in our UK National Health Service as a procurement lead. So this is a topic I know that he can speak to as well. Now, what's come up for me, a couple of things, Angela, as you shared. One is I haven't seen that report, but I can totally sense and feel in my body the lightness that would come from a group of people that have had to code switch and pretend they are something that they're not, just to conform to the office environment. And suddenly I can imagine there's this lightness of like, I can still do my job really well, if not better, from home, because I've got the tech and I'm still part of the culture, but I don't have to pretend I'm somebody that I'm not. Yeah. And that combined with, which I know because there's people really close to me, Angela, that are trying to force the back to work narrative around, we're a social company, inverted commas, get the F back in the office quick because I want to be able to control you. Like, they're the two things that are popping up for me right now, which are really, really important topics that need to be discussed and not just left on the sidelines, right?
Yeah, and it's so interesting because, I think what we're missing here also is if we're going to go down the same path, meaning the office culture doesn't change, right? Culture doesn't change. Then what's going to happen is your people who decide to work from home or work from home more often, which are your marginalized team members, from a society perspective, right? Your people of color, your women, even people with disabilities, right? If you think about people with disabilities, that's another factor. So now I can work from home in the comfort of my own space. People with neurodiversity, that might be a benefit to them. So now you've got all these people who are already marginalized, working from home, not in sight, not at top of mind, not in the office. And now you've got an equity issue. So now managers are going to continue, who are in the office, are going to continue to promote the people they see the most. They're going to provide opportunities and get in front of the people they see the most. It's kind of that recency bias, right? Of naturally, if someone's at top of mind, we're going to think about them and think about them when an opportunity pops up. So I don't think the answer is all of us going back to the office, but there's got to be a middle ground, and there's got to be a check and balance of our biases and why we're thinking about the paradigms we do, and especially leaders, because they're making these decisions that could, again, widen this gap that continues to widen over time.
Wow. You've just woken up in my favorite city, Chicago. Like, I knew you'd bring some fire today, Angela. I knew you'd bring but it's so brilliant, because I'm linking this back to where you started, actually, from a personal point of view about mindfulness. And I link intentionality to being mindful. You have to choose to be mindful. You have to be conscious. So I'm wondering, where do you see consciousness and being super intentional as part of this? How do we maintain equity? And in fact, actually, how could this new world we're stepping into be a key accelerator of equity if done well and intentionally? I'm wondering what your thoughts are and what maybe some of your ideas are around that.
Yeah, so when I think about the role of a leader, right? And when I say leader, I'm not talking about the person in charge necessarily. It's someone who has influence, who has a responsibility to other people. So I consider myself a leader at work. I consider myself a leader in my household with my aging parents, right? So that's the link back to mom. I consider myself a leader in many different facets. And so that's a big burden on your shoulders. If you choose to be a leader in any facet of life, it's a huge responsibility, and I don't take it lightly. So I think as leaders of companies who are experiencing this shift, intentionality around the design of the next culture, I think needs to be, honestly, we need to revisit it. I mean, I talk about this a lot, but I think we sometimes think, oh, well, values don't change, values, 100 years ago, we set our values as a company, but stuff has changed. I mean, it's versus 100 years ago. I mean, if your values are the same, I know they should, for the most part, stay pretty solid, but this has been a pivotal few years for us as a society. And so this is a great opportunity for you to reevaluate that, get yourself out of your own head, ask your people, be humble, have humility around the needs of your people. And that will help guide, I think, not just individual needs, but also as a leader, you should also be looking at the system, the team, how everything impacts each other. That's a skill set we should have as leaders, to be able to take those needs and then say, okay, well, how do I make sure my own actions, my own behaviors are meeting the needs of these individuals, but also creating more equity, more inclusion, more senses of belonging, not just within my team, but across the organization. So I don't know if I have all the answers. I can't tell you, like, there's 3 things. So I think we're figuring this out, like this equity piece, and the fact that on one hand, giving people flexibility to work from home creates equity. So if I'm a working mother, I now feel like my needs are met. But now on this other side of equity, it may be impacting me because I'm not visible now. I'm not going to get that promotion. And so I think the one thing, if we could just focus in, is like ourselves, like awareness, making sure that we're checking our biases, because there are hundreds of biases in the brain that cause us to do the things we do. And I think if we as leaders can do some humble self-reflection, that would be a good first step.
And humble, humility, vulnerability, listening, these are all really deeply human traits that you're pointing to that are critical, yet historically have not been, the focus of leadership development, of organizational design. It's all been system, process. So like, yes. I love you talking about blowing, I'm going to say it, blowing shit up. We do, like, this is an opportunity to reimagine, isn't it? Like a total opportunity to reimagine, which should be exciting if we come from the right mindset.
Yeah, and let me throw some optimism in there, because you just did, and I'm gonna ride on that train of optimism, because I am optimistic. I'm very optimistic, because we have a generation, our Gen Zers. So I call myself an elder millennial, right? So I'm old news, okay? I'm almost in my 40s. I think there's this perception of like, oh, those kids, those millennials, we have kids. Those kids are like almost teenagers now. So like, we are old news. We're talking about a whole new generation called Gen Z. And these kids, oh my gosh, I could cry thinking about how amazing they are, because they are holding companies accountable. They are saying, what are you doing for me? Empowerment, putting power back into the people, making it clear that organizations should have a social responsibility, should be talking about equity, should be talking about justice. I mean, I don't know if we can get past it with this next generation, because nothing's getting past them. They are a force to reckon with, and I'm just so excited. So the reason why I mentioned that is the definition of leadership is changing. And this next generation I feel like, is going to just redefine it altogether. And you're going to have your traditional leaders who are going to be retiring and moving on and playing golf, doing whatever they do. But this group of Gen Zers, I think the emerging workforce is just it's gonna change, and they're gonna ensure that it changes. So that's why I'm optimistic.
I love it, but I love your optimistic pragmatism. Yeah, we need to be pragmatic. There's real issues to navigate, but we can also be hopeful. And I love that you bring both of those lenses, which is brilliant. I want to just acknowledge Adrian shared a couple of great comments here, Angela. Lots of factors may come into play. Groups of people draw and experience such a range of intersecting priorities and cultural differences that feed into their resonance with equity. Following up with equity has to be deliberate and considered, as it's different for each person. So thanks for that, Adrian. What I'm really seeing in that, and I think I've seen this in your work as well, Angela, is and again, I'll come back to your mindful thing, how you open. That's why I love these conversations without an agenda. How do we be intentional? How do we be mindful? And how do we truly design, both for the system but the individual? Because I think that's the opportunity we've got right now, is if we can create the space intentionally to see each human being as a whole intersectional human, the company will make more money and produce better outcomes, right? The evidence is there. Yet I still see quite a big mindset gap within organizations and their leadership, because I don't think they want to do the bloody work, Angela, to be honest, a lot of the time.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And I think a lot of times people don't really understand the difference between equality and equity either. Those are two very different concepts. So equality is saying, okay, and equality sometimes works at a systematic level, right? Because I want to know I'm treated equally as everybody else. Like if I am considered for a leadership opportunity, or let's say I decide to want to move across the state, like I want to be treated equally as my colleague over here. But equity is about then taking it to intersectionality. I think is a great word to use, the intersectionality and the diversity of each individual, and say, what are your needs, and how can we apply this to getting you to a place of equity and meeting your needs in whichever way it is. So I think there's a mix of two. We have to create equality where everyone is on a similar playing field for the most part. But let's be real, equity comes into play because we have a group of people, I'll speak for Americans because that's the country I'm, US of A, where I'm coming from, where we've had some pretty damning historical events happen within our generations, where that have been passed down from generation to generation, have impacted our opportunities. And yes, we're in 2021, but those things have not gone away. They're still residual. They're still coming out in subtle, overt and covert ways of working, how we think about healthcare. All those things compound over time. And so there's a lot to think about, and it's deep shit. Like it's not surface level. And I agree with you. A lot of companies just don't want to go there. They don't want to talk about the disparities that have happened historically. They don't want to think about that. They just want to think about moving forward. But you can't separate it from the rest of the conversation.
I love how you brought the word that's been coming up for me a lot in the last few weeks. I've seen this thing around integral theory, like Ken Wilber's work, but I've never thought about it from my own personal lived experience. Andrew, in the last week, I've literally been having like this clarity around like two things. You spoke about equity and equality. I think we get to both through that integration. to actually how do we intentionally level the playing field, equality, and then how from that basis do we then see each other, human being, for their individual intersectional needs, equity. So like I see this really, like you can't, I don't know, you're the psychologist, tell me, can you approach both at the same time concurrently? Because I get the feeling you can. And maybe maybe that's part of the issue. We're trying to look at one then the other and not doing them together. I don't know.
Well, that's the, I think sometimes you have in an organization, you have some leaders who are too high level, right? They're thinking about the system, let's just apply the solution that we think helps most people. And look, I get it. I work in HR. I work in HR. So I understand at some point you've got to make some decisions for the company, but you also have to have leaders, inclusive leaders, people-centric leaders who can be talking to their people and understanding what they can be doing to create equity within their team. What are some of the gaps when it comes to, because at the end of the day, we can like fix things systemically and systematically, but I think it's baked in so deep. So this has got to be a journey. So we need those leaders to be talking to their people about equity and equality and bubbling that back up to the bigger system to say this needs to change. I mean, things need to change. That's the problem. That's why people don't want to touch this subject, because things have worked well for us. They've especially worked well for people like you, right? I mean, to be fair, I talk about, I have a video that I recorded that I told a story about, like, the 5-foot door, the 2-foot door. Okay. So if workplaces were designed, all workplaces were designed with 2-foot doors, and everyone that was 2 feet and under went through those doors. All the furniture was, perfectly designed for those folks who are 2 feet tall. And then you've got these people who are 5, 7, 10 feet, and they've got to crouch into that door. They've got to like fit themselves into that little corner, into that little couch. That's a problem, right? And that's literally how the workplace has been designed. It's just not as it's not as clear as that story, but there are other things. There are microaggressions. There are our leadership pipeline and how that's been developed over time, the diversity in leadership or at the organization, how we design processes and policies, and even the workplace design as a whole. It's not very human-centric the way it's been designed. So these are the things we need to be talking about, and we need to knock down the door, make it taller, so everyone can get through.
So beautiful. So beautiful. Like, this is, I hope you're enjoying this. If you're still live with us, or if you're watching this back, if you're still live with us, Adrian, Michelle, if anybody's got a question for Angela, feel free to put it in the chat. We'd love to pose while we've got Angela for another sort of 7 to 10 minutes. If you've got any particular questions, do throw them in. One of the things I'd like to ask, and it's for as much clarity as for me as for anyone that might be watching us, you spoke about systemically and systematically. I think quite often the systemic conversation is, I think it gets interchanged for systematic. Mm-hmm. Would you mind clarifying the difference? I've got my interpretation, and I think about systemic as being the, it's basically the power dynamic is systemic, and then systematic is sort of process. How do you actually influence? Is that close, or is that a bit too far away? What's your explanation, please?
No, I think that's a beautiful, simple way to think about it. I mean, systemic is, I don't know, I kind of almost think about it's almost like the unconscious baking in of tradition. Things have been done this way for a while. But I mean, if you're talking about a systemic factor or a systemic element, it's something that has happened over time and has impacted the current state. So that's systemic. Systematic is like you are applying something systematically. So if something has been applied systematically, it's being scaled and impacting everyone systematically. There's less history, I feel like, to systematic, perhaps, because you can systematically update something or systematically apply a policy or systematically apply a process. But you could also say, like, our healthcare system typically does not serve people of color, right? That's a systematic application of something, where systemic might come more into our history and over generations have impacted the folks who are, currently living today.
Thank you so much for expanding on that. I think that's just really helpful sort of clarity, because words matter, right? When we're having these conversations. So
yeah, and I'm certainly not an expert between the two. So if anyone out there has some definitions or some tidbits, mine was very oversimplified, I think.
But it's what works, eh? If it allows us to connect to one another and have the dialogue, I think that's the key thing for me. And I think I really want to invite anybody that's watching us live or maybe watches this back. I still see in workplaces, colleagues I speak to, my global network, let me give a real life example of some of the issues we see right now in terms of DEI and bias, right, Angela? Mm-hmm. The number of times that I've heard over many, many years, that woman over there, she's of childbearing year age. Maybe don't think about her for the promotion. Like, this SHIT still happens in 2021, right? And no one says anything about it. So, and I feel guilty because there's one real life example from many years ago where I didn't speak up because I didn't understand DEI. I didn't realize the knock-on effects of me not speaking up back then. So I just wanted to put that out as a real life example. What's happening in your organizations right now, or the clients that you serve, where you might hear someone saying, hey, don't give that person a promotion because they're of that age, or actually they don't look like everybody else, so maybe don't actually think about them. They might be too disruptive. Like, have you got any other examples of sort of like be aware of that maybe you're coming across today in 2021 that might help our viewers maybe sort of stay conscious to some of these real life examples, Angela?
Yeah, so I think going back to the definition of the work, how we've defined the workplace, the concept of professionalism. My favorite one is executive presence. Oh, executive presence. She doesn't have executive presence. He doesn't have executive presence. What does that mean? I think we have to challenge these concepts of polished or professional or having executive presence. And you could say those things, right? But if you have no basis other than your own bias and what you consider professional, for example, like, a guy comes in with whole sleeve of tattoos. Why does that impact the business? Because this person has decided to get tattoos. Let's really think about that paradigm. Does this make this person less talented? Because a woman has spoken up at a meeting, when usually men do that, just they don't even think about it, but it takes us some conscious effort to be like, do I really fight this battle? Now you don't have executive presence because you're being maybe too aggressive or not suiting to gender roles that other people think you need to be following. So again, that's the kind of like internal, like, let me really question what I'm thinking here. Why did I not choose that person for that role? What about this person's behavior made me think that they would not be a good fit for a promotion or this role or this new opportunity? So anything around professionalism, I always just say, okay, tell me more. What do you mean? What has this person done that will impact the business or the team that you believe won't suit this role or suit this opportunity?
Oh my God, you've hit one of my pet peeves, which I got absolutely roasted about 2 months ago. So I'm not showing this to many people.
There you go. Okay.
Look. Yes. Okay. So there's my dragon tattoo. Now I'm sharing this for a reason. I once thought about getting a sleeve, and I was told people will judge you if you do that, and it's actually might be a risk to the business if people see you with that as a sleeve. I stopped getting a sleeve because of that. Now, as you say, am I any lesser of a salesperson or of a culture leader because I've got a tattoo on my arm or not? Like, it's mad. And also, the one that makes me laugh the most, honestly, I've got to get this one out, Angie, you've started me off, is it's the suit thing, right? If you want to wear a suit, great. But a dress policy that says you all have to look identical, who is that benefiting? Like, I just don't like. It just makes me even laugh that like there's such a thing as a dress policy that exists. Like, do you see dress policies still? Like, it bamboozles me, Angela. It bamboozles me. You must all look the same.
Yeah, it makes me chuckle a little bit. I mean, if you are an event planner and you're like hosting a conference in person soon, just get rid of the dress policy. Like business casual, business. There's just let people wear what they would like to wear. And I know it's so entrenched, right? Like professional is a suit. Professional is, not having anything below your knees, or for women, right? So even for women, it's even more constrained. Shoulders, knees, like why? What? Like who made that threshold of you can't show a shoulder or anything above your knee? I mean, it's just ridiculous. It's so outdated and it's traditional, and we accept it because it's traditional. It's like, well, even when I was, in school, I would go to I had training around like professional appearance and presence, and we had pictures showing what you should and should not wear, and it's so arbitrary. I think now looking at it, because we've been like in COVID in our sweatpants the entire year, we're like, why? Why do I want to go back to wearing heels? So yeah.
Amazing. But I'm just going to weave this back to where we started again, because I think it's just a brilliant invitation. Hopefully, if you've watched us live, you're going to watch this back. I can't believe you won't have taken some great value out of this discussion. Also, the contributions from Adrian, thank you. There's an opportunity, and I come back to your blow stuff up, right? Like blowing stuff up is not a negative thing. Like it's reimagining, it's creative, it's what we've suppressed for generations. Blowing it up and reimagining equity, equality, humanity. Like this is exciting. I think we're on the edge of being able to unleash human potential like we never have done in 100 years, Angela.
I agree. I'm very optimistic, and it's going to take all of us, and I'll be honest with you. Again, I talk about this generation because I'm just so thrilled. I don't know if businesses will survive if they don't start to rethink things. I don't think you're going to be able to even attract the next generation. So it is a pivotal point. And I think we're finally finding, and you and I have been talking about this probably for decades, but companies have a responsibility to their communities. They have a responsibility to society. You can't just set up shop and make profit and treat your employees like poop. You have a responsibility, even if it's just for your 5 employees that you employ. Like I tell people this all the time. Those 5 employees go home and they have families. Mm-hmm. And the way you've treated them, well, indifferent, or badly, it's going to project into their families, into their community. So you're not just impacting 5 people, you're impacting perhaps 45 people or 55 people. Now think about a mammoth of an organization that's 200,000 people. You could be impacting a whole state, a whole community, and creating equity or creating inequities in an entire population. So I think we're finally understanding the impact of the business as a system, but as a part of the community, which is huge.
That's amazing. What an amazing way to wrap up, Angela. Thank you so much for joining. I always love talking to you. We were joking before we came on, so let's just have one of our chats and hopefully people will join us and give us some great comments, which they did. So I just want to say thanks to everyone again, to Adrian, Elise, Chris, Michelle. Thanks for all popping in with us. Angela, thank you for all you're doing. You're an incredible human being. Do check out Angela's podcast. Let me just pop up again in case you jump to the end, because I know some people like doing that in a book. So just in case they do it with this chat, go check out Angela R. Howard. And if I can be of any service, there's going to be a little video now, because I believe we're at the edge of this cusp, because it's to do with, I believe, Angela, the fundamental central point is connecting to ourselves, connecting to others, and connecting to the systems around us, exactly as you so eloquently wrapped up at the end. We are part of systems all of the time, and we need to start feeling that and not just thinking it, is my sort of invitation. So last word to you. What are you going into the rest of your day, in your weekend, feeling, thinking? Has anything shifted in the last 34 minutes?
Well, I think, my heart was heavy in the beginning, but I think we've brought some optimism to this conversation. And so, I'm gonna look to the rest of the weekend with some optimism and thinking about what I can do going into next week's chaos. Because our work is chaotic. It's so unpredictable, and it changes every week these days. And so I think optimism and mindfulness and intentionality, those are some of the words you mentioned that made me rethink a little bit. So thank you for that.
Oh, I'm just the mirror. Thank you, Angela. Thanks everyone for joining us. Thank you, Angela, for everything you're doing. And have a great weekend, everyone. Take care. Are you someone that leads other human beings and knows in their body that there is a better, more healthy way to organize ourselves in the workplace, but we just don't find the time or just don't find the capacity to be able to reimagine what that could look and feel like? Or maybe you personally have suppressed feeling within the workplace. I did it for many, many years, based on childhood trauma. We don't always realize the power of the stories that we tell ourselves in our mind. And sometimes having third-party support to allow ourselves to think for ourselves, as ourselves, without any interruption, can be the key to unlocking so much potential, both within ourselves, but also in how we lead others. So I'm here, Gary Turner, as someone to offer that space to you as a thinking partner, on demand or over a fixed number of sessions. And should that be of interest to you, please do check out my Calendly link, and I'd love to have an exploratory conversation with you to see if we're a good fit. Until then, I hope you enjoy these insights from my previous podcast engagements.